Hello and welcome to the Digital CxO podcast. I'm Amanda Razani, and with me today I have Leonard Marano. He is president of the Americas at Lectra. How are you doing today?
Good, Amanda. Thanks for having me on.
Happy to have you on the show. Can you share a little bit about Lectra? What services do you provide?
Sure. So Lectra is an integrated solutions technology company that provides a suite of equipment, software, services, and industrial intelligence to the fashion, automotive, furniture, and then other industrial value streams, including aerospace, defense, marine, recreation.
Wonderful. So we're here today to discuss fashion manufacturing trends. There are 5 specifically that you were going to share. So can you share what are these trends? How are they impacting the industry?
Sure. The main 5, to start with, I would say the first one is the need for better reading of brand performance. Right now in a very highly competitive environment, with product being sourced all over the world, costs and pricing being adjusted, having, a good sense of how your brand is performing in the marketplace compared to the competition is going to be key. And that allows you to make sure that you have the right product on the right in the right place at the right price at the right time. And there's AI driven web-based tools that facilitate this. Like there's a product called RepViews that we have that does a lot of competitive benchmarking, so you can compare assortments versus competitors and things like that, and get a good gauge of how your brand is positioned in the marketplace. So that's really the first one. The second one is price increases versus perceived value, right? And this is a trend that we talked about in the beginning of the year, not knowing what the macroeconomic context was gonna be like. But as consumer demand goes up and down, as they look at the value of different segments of the fashion market differently, whether it's luxury or sportswear, and as prices fluctuate, how do they perceive the value of your brand compared to others in the market? And are they going to be willing to pay for whatever your primary value proposition is? The third, and this is one that we see in all different parts of the world, is increases in regulatory trends. And, in the US, it may, fluctuate up and down how rigid they are, and whether we face, increased regulation or deregulation. The reality is that most fashion companies have some global aspect and require traceability and visibility throughout their value streams around the world. So having tools like, we have a platform called Textile Genesis that provides visibility from literally the cotton field all the way through production into the consumer. Having the visibility throughout that whole supply chain is going to be key. So you could make sure that, when you're importing products, that you can validate that it comes from a sustainable and responsibly sourced, mill or farm or cut and sew factory. The fourth one that everybody's talking about, this is one that I'm particularly passionate about because it's something that Lectra's been on the leading edge of for a long time, is having AI drive innovation. And, there's so many uses for artificial intelligence throughout every area that Lectra participates in, whether it's, planning the product life cycle through, pattern design for the garment that's going to be produced, whether it's making the production and the material usage more sustainable throughout the process. On the marketing side, whether it's predicting brand performance, as I mentioned earlier, whether it's benchmarking competitive trends, there's a lot of things that we could use to that we could leverage AI for, and that we have been really leaning into AI since 2007, since the Internet of Things kind of came to be, and we connected the cyber physical worlds, when our equipment first became connected to the internet. So that's one that we see really being a game changer for us and for the fashion marketplace. And then the other one, and this is more relevant than ever, particularly with the current trade environment, is the emergence of new geographies, and that's primarily on the production side. When you look at the business, you know, the fashion manufacturing business, really starting in about 2017, 2018, we saw this shift away from China. A lot of it went to other parts of Asia, whether it was Vietnam or Cambodia. The nearshoring trend for those in the Americas was very real. I wouldn't say it was reshoring, but it was definitely a nearshoring where we saw, business grow in the Dominican Republic and other islands in the Caribbean, um, Central America, Mexico. So, what other geographies are going to grow in this, as a result of this trade war and whatever trade agreements, get negotiated. There's going to be winners and losers, right? And at Lectra, what our responsibility is to make sure that both the brands and the manufacturers have the infrastructure and the tools to give them the agility and the flexibility to navigate this.
Yeah, let's talk about that because we are in the middle of, all these new tariffs and how are these going to play out. So, as companies are moving these manufacturing facilities, what advice do you have for them? I mean, that's a big undertaking to move your manufacturing location.
It's a big undertaking, but the key is to have the data infrastructure that allows you to do it in a nimble way. So, I had mentioned before that there's a lot of areas of the value stream that we participate in. When you look at manufacturing, there's certain elements, right? You have the inception of an order, right? So you have an order. It could be coming from a brand. It could be coming directly from a retail outlet. If it's a customized order, you have that order being translated into, a production ready set of data. And that's, um, the patterns that are going to be actually produced and then sewn together. That's taking those patterns and putting them on a marker. What a marker is a series of patterns that are put together on the material in a way that maximizes your material usage. Uh, then it goes into planning your production. Okay, what set of production ready files do I want to send to which location and when? And then it's monitoring that production. And if you have that data thread set up, wherever that production is becomes a means to an end, right? So you could have somebody in New York City taking a look and saying, all right, I have some contractors in Vietnam, Mexico, and Dominican Republic. Where do I need to send these data based off of the ability of that contractor and the lead time? Or if I'm a vertically integrated manufacturer, I can have factories all over the world and say, you know what? you know, Vietnam is going to have a 34% tariff. I know that we're still, in the middle of the USMCA exemption with Mexico. I'm going to shift that production to Mexico because you have that cloud-based data structure set up, and we have an enterprise solution called Valia that enables that. You can make that, you can maneuver those orders. Now, obviously, you have to have the material and the labor to support it, but at least from a data infrastructure standpoint, you have the agility and flexibility to be able to shift.
And then you mentioned AI, and of course, every company is looking at how they can harness AI and integrate AI. What, from your experience, what roadblocks do business leaders come up against when it comes to integrating AI tools?
I think, the biggest roadblock that leaders that we engage with is not knowing what's out there and not knowing where to start, right? I think that, as new generations of leadership that kind of grew up, hearing about AI come into leadership roles in the companies that we deal with, there's much more of an openness, but they don't know what's out there. And the reality is that a lot of the customers that we deal with don't realize that they've been leveraging, AI capabilities with systems that they've had for a long time. So, for instance, you heard me mention early on that, we've been leaning into AI since we connected the first pieces of equipment on the cut room floor to the internet. Since 2007, we've been accumulating all of that data using machine learning. We're able to predict when we think our equipment that's on the factory floor is going to fail. So what will very often happen is, we'll have a machine learning algorithm that says, okay, if this motor is running hot for 3 days, we know that if it runs hot like that for 5 days, it's going to fail. We'll proactively ship a motor out, and a customer will say, "Hey, I just got this motor in. What's it for?" "Oh, well, we think it's going to fail based off of our machine learning algorithms." So we've been doing that for the last 18 years. So that's machine learning AI. With generative AI, we use it in our cloud-based platforms on creating markers on our production planning algorithms. Those are all AI based. So there's a lot of things out there now that allows our customers to really ease into it in a way that is natural to their own workflow and processes.
Thanks for sharing. Those are some great use cases. What do you envision as AI is advancing very rapidly? What do you envision for the future of manufacturing with AI?
I think it's going to enable further automation down the value stream, right? So when you look at a typical factory that's cutting patterns and sewing garments together, they're automated up to a point. And that point is typically at the end of our line of cutters. At that point, it gets manually taken off the machine, manually kitted, and then brought off to sewing, right? So could you leverage AI to combine with future automation technologies to bridge the gap between the end of the cutting line that's already automated and leverages AI to the finished garment for the consumer? I think that's where the puck is headed.
All right. So, with that being said, and I know we've been through industrial revolution before, but I know a lot of people are concerned about job losses. What advice do you have there?
There's two ways that I look at it. One is, you know, artificial intelligence is creating a new type of job, right? And this is something that we've seen as we've gone through our own digital revolution as an organization internally, but also we see it with our customers where, the labor pool that's being brought into it is less, mechanical or less viewed as, hard labor than they are technology positions. So there's a shift there. The other piece of it is that, when you look at the workforce in the markets that we serve, in fashion, in automotive, in furniture, there's a workforce shortage. So our customers cannot replace the folks that are retiring, and it's just the nature of the work. So, one is creating a new type of job, and two, it's going to help offset the shortfall of workforce that we have as the workplace moves on in the markets that we serve.
Hmm. Absolutely. Well, if there was one key takeaway you could leave our audience with today, what would that be?
Get started, right? Understand what's out there because there's a lot of tools out there now that are light to implement that you could be taking advantage of now that are technology enabled that could connect the dots throughout your process in manufacturing. So get started now. The tools are out there. Take a look and see what's available that fits your company and your process.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your insights.
Thanks a lot, Amanda.
All right. And thanks to our audience. Stay tuned. There's more.